Did you know that the story of Cain goes far beyond the tragic murder of Abel? Today, we will explore the hidden mysteries behind the exile of this enigmatic character and reveal lesser-known aspects that continue to intrigue scholars and the curious. Get ready for a revealing journey where we will question: what really happened to Cain after that unthinkable act? What are the secrets behind the enigmatic mark he bore, and how did it shape his fate as a wanderer? In this introduction, I invite you to ask yourself, is Cain's flight and the founding of his city merely a desperate attempt to escape divine judgment, or a symbol of a rebellious movement that resonates to this day? As you start this video, you will discover that biblical enigmas can make us reflect on our own paths and choices. If you are thirsty for answers and wish to understand the mysteries that Cain's story hides, this is the right place for you. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, as every detail we reveal could transform the way you understand the relationship between sin, redemption, and humanity's role in the face of divine designs. Throughout this video, you will be invited to dive into surprising theories and confront interpretations that challenge the conventional, all while questioning what truth and justice mean in the ancestral narrative. Will uncovering these secrets also help us find answers to the dilemmas we face in modern life? Stay with us and prepare for an analysis that goes beyond the obvious, uniting history, faith, and reflection in each revelation. To establish the context of the narrative, we need to return to the early days of biblical history, where newly created humanity lived in direct communion with the divine. In this setting, Adam and Eve, the first humans, gave rise to a family, where the relationship with God was intense and without intermediaries. Cain and Abel, their sons, were raised in an environment where every action had profound implications, and obedience was crucial to maintaining harmony with the Creator. From the beginning, Cain's trajectory was marked by choices that would reflect not only his character, but also the way humanity would deal with sin and repentance. When Cain committed the first homicide by killing his brother Abel, the act was not merely a simple crime, but represented a turning point in human history. God's direct question, "Where is Abel, your brother?" exposed the essence of Cain's internal conflict, revealing a hardened heart and a mind dominated by arrogance. This response, filled with disdain, was the harbinger of a gradual distancing from the values that once sustained a life in communion with the divine. The family environment, once guided by faith and obedience, began to fragment under the weight of sin and guilt. It is essential to understand that the society of early humanity had a very different dynamic from ours. The first humans lived in a reality where relationships were direct, and every deviation was felt immediately. Cain's error, in failing to admit his guilt and displaying arrogance, instigated a tension that would reflect in the very structure of humanity. The account invites us to reflect on the fragility of human beings in the face of wrong choices, and how pride can lead to a distancing from divine light. As we understand the context in which Cain lived, the viewer begins to perceive that his story is not just about an isolated crime, but rather about the beginning of a cycle of consequences that reverberates throughout human history. This narrative reveals the challenges of maintaining an integral relationship with the divine and highlights the importance of repentance. Thus, Cain's trajectory becomes a mirror for our own choices, showing that distancing from essential values can have irreversible consequences on both personal and collective levels. The mark of Cain is one of the most enigmatic and debated elements of this biblical narrative, igniting the imagination and curiosity of scholars and believers throughout the centuries. This sign, which God placed on Cain after Abel's murder, is not merely a punishment, but also a multifaceted symbol that reveals both divine justice and mercy. Some interpretations argue that the mark would be a physical sign, visible to all, capable of identifying the transgressor, while others believe it is a spiritual symbol, an indelible impression on the soul that carries the weight of sin. Each theory brings profound implications for understanding Cain's exile. If viewed as a physical sign, the mark would serve as a constant reminder of his guilt and the impossibility of hiding from God. This interpretation emphasizes the idea that human actions, no matter how much they try to be disguised, always leave a mark on reality and on the history of humanity. On the other hand, The view of a spiritual sign opens up reflections on redemption and inner transformation. In this context, the mark would be an invitation to introspection, a call to change, even if Cain did not demonstrate repentance. The duality of the mark reflects the complexity of human nature itself, the coexistence of guilt and the potential for redemption. This ambiguity reinforces the tension between punishment and grace, a recurring theme throughout the biblical narrative. The mark of Cain, therefore, is not only a symbol of his transgression, but also a warning to all of us about the consequences of impulsive and excessive choices. Furthermore, by preventing anyone from killing Cain, God established a clear limit to human justice, indicating that vengeance belongs exclusively to the divine, and that any attempt at retaliation could further aggravate the cycle of violence. This detail underscores the importance of understanding Cain's mark in a broader context, where each symbol and decision has repercussions that extend beyond the individual, affecting the entire social and spiritual structure of humanity. The I analysis of the mark, therefore, invites us to reflect on the significance of personal responsibility and repentance, essential elements for rebuilding a healthy relationship with the divine and with others. Exploring the second mystery surrounding the narrative of Cain, we encounter a question that challenges traditional interpretations. Who, in fact, would be able to avenge Abel? In the biblical account, Cain's fear is expressed forcefully when he questions, "Will anyone who finds me kill me?" This doubt not only highlights the fear of immediate retribution, but also hints at the existence of an already diverse and expanding population beyond the direct children of Adam and Eve. Cain's perception, feeling that his crime could trigger a violent response, suggests that humanity was in a stage of dispersion and growth that exceeded the boundaries of the more well-known narrative. From this concern arises the hypothesis that the early days of humanity were marked by a plurality of lineages, formed by descendants who, although not the central focus of the accounts, played fundamental roles in the formation of the first communities. This possibility broadens the scope of the biblical narrative, allowing for the understanding that the human universe already possessed a complex dynamic, where kinship relations and tribal alliances began to be established. Thus, Cain's fear would not merely reflect an instinct for self-preservation, but also an unconscious recognition that other groups might seek justice for Abel's loss. Another point that connects to this line of thought is the origin of Cain's wife. If the human population were restricted solely to the children of Adam and Eve, the logistics of Cain's marriage would present an even greater enigma. However, the existence of a companion for Cain reinforces the hypothesis that humanity had already multiplied significantly, enabling marriages between close relatives without jeopardizing the continuity of the species, given the genetic and cultural conditions of the early times. This perspective makes the existence of a broader social environment plausible, in which Cain's fear of potential revenge fits perfectly, as he would not only be facing the wrath of direct family members, but also that of entire communities seeking to repay the injustice committed. This detailed analysis allows us to visualize a primitive scenario where family boundaries were flexible and the evolution of human communities, although still embryonic, already pointed to conflicts and alliances that would shape the fate of humanity. As we delve into the emotional reflection permeating Cain's narrative, we are immediately confronted with the weight of human choices and the devastating impact of pride and alienation. In this segment, the focus shifts to Cain's internal complexity and how his emotions, fear, absent remorse, and the desperate search for stability intertwine with the universal dilemmas we all face. By recounting Cain's story, we invite you, the viewer, to reflect on the moments when, perhaps unconsciously, we make decisions driven by insecurity and unchecked self-confidence, which can distance us from what we truly seek, reconnection with our inner selves and with the divine. In committing the irreversible act of taking his brother's life, Cain not only transgressed a divine order, but also initiated a process of emotional isolation. His reaction, the absence of remorse and the arrogance with which he justified himself, reveals a man consumed by the fear of retribution and unable to recognize his own mistakes. This fear, which manifests as restlessness in the face of the possibility of being hunted and punished, serves as a mirror for our own moments of vulnerability, when we prefer to face reality with defenses up, rather than admitting the flaws that keep us from true transformation. Upon reflecting on this stance, we can see that Cain's true tragedy lies not only in the crime committed, but in his inability to redeem himself and seek genuine change. Instead, he chose to build walls, both physical and emotional, that kept him away from the possibility of reconciliation and growth. This choice resonates in our lives, reminding us that pride often prevents us from recognizing that the key to overcoming challenges lies in humility and openness to repentance. It is at this point that the narrative becomes not just a historical account but a timeless lesson on the importance of taking responsibility for our actions and seeking inner transformation. By connecting Cain's story with the personal experience of the viewer, the video invites each person to examine their own paths and consider whether we are at times building barriers that isolate us from the potential for healing and evolution. This introspection is vital, as it helps us identify patterns of behavior that, if left unchallenged, can perpetuate a cycle of self-sabotage and distancing from the values that truly matter. Thus, the emotional reflection presented here is not limited to the figure of Cain but extends to all of us, as a reminder that reconciliation with oneself and with the divine is the path to true transformation. Ultimately, the story of Cain shows us that the absence of repentance and the refusal to seek forgiveness can lead to an existence marked by loneliness and the constant fear of judgment. By transforming this account into a metaphor for modern dilemmas, we are challenged to ask, are we willing to confront our own mistakes and seek a change that reconnects us with what is essential? As we reach the end of this journey of discovery and reflection, we are invited to revisit the story of Cain from a new perspective, where the teachings extend far beyond the events narrated and into our own life experiences. The biblical account, with its nuances and mysteries, offers us a mirror in which we can identify the flaws and virtues that inhabit our being. It is a story that, although ancient, remains relevant, as it speaks to the challenges of pride, personal responsibility, and the relentless pursuit of redemption. In reflecting on Cain's journey, we are compelled to question, are we truly willing to face our mistakes and transform our lives through repentance and humility? In this conclusion, it is essential to recognize that the path to true change does not lie in fleeing or justifying our failures, but in the courage to admit our weaknesses and learn from them. Just as Cain tried to build a city to find safety, we often erect barriers in our lives that isolate us from what truly matters. This barrier can be pride, denial, or even the fear of confronting our own essence. The message that the story of Cain conveys is clear. Reconciliation with oneself and with the divine is only possible when we set aside the defenses we have built to protect our ego and allow change, though painful, to transform us profoundly. Bringing this reflection into the context of our daily lives, we realize that every decision made, every obstacle faced, and every recognized failure can be the starting point for a journey of personal growth. Cain's experience, with all its mistakes and consequences, teaches us that repentance is not synonymous with weakness, but with wisdom. It warns us about the dangers of distancing ourselves from what is essential, the connection with our own humanity, and the values that sustain us. This connection is the foundation of a fulfilling life, where forgiveness and transformation walk hand in hand. Now, as we conclude this video, I invite you, the viewer, to reflect on your own journey. Think about the moments when pride and fear prevented you from achieving significant change. Reflect on the barriers you have created and question whether they genuinely offer you protection or merely distance you from the possibility of reconnecting with what is pure and true in your essence. Remember that just as Cain had the opportunity to redeem himself, we also have the chance to rewrite our story, transforming each mistake into a valuable lesson for the future. This is the true message that the biblical narrative seeks to convey: the importance of recognizing our flaws, seeking forgiveness, and above all, building a path of renewal and hope. If this message touched your heart, share this video and Leave your comment so that we can, together, strengthen this chain of reflection and transformation. Before finishing, I reinforce the invitation for you to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, as many more stories and mysteries await to be unveiled, contributing to a journey of knowledge and personal evolution that can transform your life.